In factoring a trinomial, we want to look at what two numbers give me 8 when I multiply them, which is 8 and 1, 2 and 4, -8, -1, and -2 and -4. Those four numbers give us 8, but which of them add up to a 6? Well, this one is the only one that adds up to a 6. So this is my factors. So I go an x plus 2 and an x plus 4. So we do the same thing down here. Now we have a -6. So I have my same factors, but this one is a -6. So then my factors are x minus 2 and x minus 4. So we're looking for numbers that multiply to give us this end number, but add up to give us this middle number. So we want multiplication and then addition. And I've already factored that out. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to look just at the number. What two numbers? So 6 times 1 gives me 6. -6 times a -1. 2 times 3 and -2 times -3. And we're looking for -5. Well, this one adds up to a -5. So my answer is -2, 3. So I have my x, and I have a -2, and I have my x -3. The difference now is we also have a y at the end, so we have to include the y with our factors. So all you have to do is make sure you have an x and a y in your factors, because you have an x squared and you have a y squared, so we split them apart. And that's how we factor when we have two variables. Now let's look at this next one where we want to factor this. The first thing we always want to check is, do we have a greatest common factor? And in this case, we do, because we have a 3 and we have an x. So I'm going to take out the 3x first before I can do anything. It gives me an x squared minus 5x minus goes into that 14 times. Now I have a trinomial that I can factor. So 14, what two numbers give us a -5? And they happen to be, I believe, a -7 and a +2. Give me a -14. This multiplies to give me -14, but when I add them, I get a -5. So my factoring is this answer. So with this problem, we want to do the exact same thing. We want to factor out the greatest common factor. So when we factor out the greatest common factor, we also want to include this negative. So I'm going to take out the negative. And 16 happens to be the greatest common factor. The t's aren't common, all of them, so I can't use the t. So when I divide a -16 with a -16t squared, I get t squared. -16 with a positive 16 is a -1t. And -16 with a positive 96 is a -6. And so now I can factor this. So what two numbers multiply? So I have to include the -16, so I want t. To give me a -6, but add up to a 1. And that would be a -3 and a t plus 2. And so there's my factoring out where we have a negative number. First, you want to get rid of the negatives. It makes it a little easier to do your factoring.